Q4 E-tron is an important model for Audi, so important that Ingolstadt feels the need to create two distinct variants, this Q4 Sportback E-tron derivative being the more dynamic looking one. Like its standard counterpart, it's built on the Volkswagen Group MEB chassis for volume all-electric cars, but pushes the boundaries of that platform in terms of the premium prices being charged here for the size of car delivered. Still, you certainly get a very upmarket feel that'll help ease you into your new electrified phase of motoring ownership.
Audi's all-electric e-tron range continues to widen as more is revealed of the company's capabilities when it comes to EV technology. Where the standard Q4 e-tron takes on the plushest versions of boxy compact EV crossovers like the Volkswagen ID.4 and the Skoda Enyaq iV, the Q4 Sportback e-tron takes aim more directly at sportier contenders in this class like the Cupra Born. Actually, all the engineering bits that matter are common between these four cars, namely the MEB platform and the battery tech. Yet Audi claims to have put its own stamp on the way this car drives and feels. Let's see. With its Q3 and Q5 Sportback models, Audi slightly differentiates the suspension feel with base variants, but there's none of that here, so the Q4 Sportback e-tron drives in the same way as the conventional Q4 model. You select drive using a slider-type shifter situated on the centre console, and once underway, there's the kind of instant throttle response you'd usually get from an EV of this sort. In terms of powertrains, there's nothing we haven't seen before in Volkswagen Group EVs. Most of these tend to be chosen with the 52 kilowatt-hour battery that's used by the base Q4 35 e-tron, which uses a 170 PS rear-driven electric motor, makes 62 miles an hour in 9 seconds, and has a range of 215 miles. Next up is the Q4 40 e-tron variant we're trying here, which has a bigger 76.6 kilowatt-hour net capacity battery and a more powerful 204 PS rear-driven motor, making 62 miles an hour in 8.5 seconds and offering a 323-mile driving range. The flagship Q4 50 e-tron Quattro variant also uses the 76.6 kilowatt-hour battery, but has both front and rear-mounted electric motors, developing a combined 299 PS, which means 62 miles an hour in just 6.2 seconds and a range of 302 miles. Plus, with its top performance variant, the top speed is lifted from the usual Q4 maximum of 99 miles an hour to 111. Across the range, there's the same kind of suspension setup you'd find in other mid-sized Audi SUVs, a McPherson strut front and 5-link rear arrangement, with sports suspension available, which lowers ride height by 15mm, and adaptive damping offered further up the range. In practice, like this model's Volkswagen Group EV cloned cousins, every Q4 e-tron is basically rear-driven. Even the 50 e-tron Quattro version only brings its front wheels into play when it absolutely has to. And when you drive a Q4 Sportback in town, you quickly realise quite a few of the reasons why. There are real advantages in placing the powertrain of a car like this, the electric motor and its associated single-speed auto gearbox, on the back axle, primarily because the front wheels are then freed up for steering duties. The turning circle is a London taxi-like 10.2 metres, better than a tiny Volkswagen Up city car, and as a result this SUV is superbly manoeuvrable for its size, jinking through traffic hold-ups and darting into spaces. As with other electric vehicles, this one's town travel is characterised by its need to constantly emit a strange E sound intended to warn pedestrians of this Q4's impending approach. You wonder, though, why it's necessary for this feature to sound so otherworldly. Other brands use film composers to create more pleasant melodies. The rear-driven format also benefits this Audi beyond the city limits, allowing a near 50-50 virtually perfect weight distribution, which, together with the low centre of gravity provided by the central battery pack placement, helps disguise its rather portly curb weight of just over 2 tonnes. That's almost 300 kilos heavier than a conventional Q5 Sportback. Despite, or perhaps because of that, traction through the turns is excellent, but as with every EV, you're always subconsciously aware of just how much bulk is impeding your forward motion. We'd hoped that Audi might have been able to engineer in a bit more ride and handling polish to the usual Volkswagen Group mid-sized EV formula here, but as it turns out, the drive experience is much as it is with a comparable Volkswagen ID.4, which means it's relatively firm. So there you have it, a sportier take on the future of conventional motoring, according to Ingolstadt, and one of the first volume-selling predominantly rear-driven cars the brand has brought us since the 1930s. You might have hoped for something a fraction more Vorsprung der Technik, but you're certainly served up a confection here that's distinctively Audi. Accessing and paying for electricity while on the road can be easily taken care of using the E-tron charging service, which provides UK subscribers with one RFID payment card that is accepted at a vast number of charge points, operated by 18 suppliers across the UK and Europe, and offers a choice of 2 fixed-price charging tariffs. The Q4 Sportback e-tron is definitely a sleeker thing than its standard-shaped counterpart, and not just visually. The drag coefficient drops from 0.28 to 0.26 CD. This sportier variant's more sharply swept-back silhouette culminates in a spoiler that sits much lower on the split and steeply raked rear window. And as the area in which the air swirls as it comes off the vehicle is restricted to the zone beneath the spoiler, that area is significantly smaller than in the ordinary Q4 e-tron. Anyway, enough for the outside, let's take a look in the cabin. Well, it's certainly nothing like anything you'll have seen from any previous Audi. Everything on the upper level is angular, with none of the elements appearing to blend very harmoniously with each other, but it all kind of works in a contemporary minimalistic sort of way. There's an unusual jutting lower console, trimmed in smudge-worthy piano black for the neat little gear selector slider, and just above, the silver-trimmed central fascia section incorporates horizontal vents and the 11.6-inch MMI Navigation Plus central display, with a sweep across the cabin that gets interrupted by this beady-browed instrument binnacle. Right, time to take a look in the rear. Now, you've got to duck slightly as you get in, but it's nothing too serious. To accommodate the battery, the back seat is mounted 70mm higher than the front, which you might expect to create a headspace issue given this Sportback variant's swept-back roofline. Actually though, while those of basketball-playing stature might struggle, most other adults should be fine back here unless they enter wearing particularly elaborate headgear. Boot space in this Sportback actually rises slightly over the ordinary model, 535 litres rather than 520. But capacity, when the 40-20-40 split seatback is lowered, falls slightly, 1,460 litres rather than 1,490. Within the Q3 and Q5 ranges, the Sportback body shape tends to outsell the conventional SUV version, and we expect the same trend to be replicated here. After all, the Q4 Sportback e-tron doesn't cost vastly more than its boxier showroom stablemate, yet makes a significantly more dynamic driveway statement. There's no real penalty for the more slippery shape in terms of either boot space or rear cabin headroom either. In this form, the Q4 is more likely to appeal to premium EV customers who might be looking at more stylised rivals like the Polestar 2, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the Kia EV6 and the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Arguably, this Audi can shade all of these competitors when it comes to cabin ambience. It has the finish, the luxury and to some extent the driving dynamics of an electric crossover from the next class up. The kind of thing you'd get from larger EV models like the Jaguar I-Pace and the Mercedes EQC. But of course, you pay for that, and with Audi, it was ever thus.